Hey guys, it's Chris. From a woman who fell overboard to a serial killer prowling for unsuspecting victims and possibly still on the loose, here are 10 reasons to never get on another cruise ship again. Number 10. 10 hours at sea. A British woman named Kay Longstaff fell off the side of her cruise ship, got lost at sea, and almost died. The poor woman, just 46 years old, tipped off the side of the boat and plummeted into the Adriatic Sea sometime around midnight on a Saturday. The boat was 60 miles off the coast of Croatia. It took the Coast Guard 10 hours to find the lost woman floating in the sea. And amazingly, she was still alive. She had been sitting at the back of the deck in the middle of the night when she accidentally tipped over the edge. The rescue workers were able to spot the exact time she fell off the boat by checking the security footage, which was lucky. They used that data to pinpoint her location in the sea and were shocked to find her still treading water 10 hours later. That's no easy feat. She was hypothermic but in surprisingly good physical shape. Ms. Longstaff told her rescuers that the reason she managed to survive is because she was extremely fit from doing yoga all the time. All that yoga actually paid off and allowed her to float in the freezing ocean for nearly half a day. At this point, you're probably wondering how she fell off that boat in the first place. And that information has not been disclosed. According to the report from the BBC, the circumstances surrounding how she did manage to fall off the ship, which is no easy thing to do accidentally, are still being investigated. Number 9. Amy Lynn Bradley, missing person. Amy Lynn Bradley was just 23 years old when in March of 1998, she went missing during a Caribbean cruise. To this day, she's never been found. Here's what happened. Amy boarded the Rhapsody of the Seas with her parents and her brother on March 24th. Everything seemed perfectly normal. The family did a little bit of partying in the early morning hours. Amy was drinking with the ship's band called the Blue Orchid inside of the dance club. One of the band members told authorities that he left Amy at about 1 a.m. and then never saw her again. And the story checks out, because Amy's father witnessed her asleep in the cabin balcony at around 5:30 in the morning. 30 minutes later, though, she was gone. At this point, the ship was on its way to Curacao. Nobody had any idea where Amy was. She vanished in that 30-minute time span between 5:30 and 6 a.m. Crew searched the ship. The Coast Guard got involved and searched for 4 days. But alas, there was no sign of her. There was no evidence that she had somehow fallen over the side, and no evidence of foul play either. She was simply there and then she wasn't. And all these years later, Amy Bradley is still missing. Police have never recovered any clues or made any significant headway in the investigation. Number 8. The murder husband. In 1988, a woman on her honeymoon flipped over the side of a luxury liner and was found floating in the ocean around 30 miles from San Diego. Her name was Karen W. Roston, only 26 years old. Her husband, Scott R. Roston, told authorities that she was blown off the boat by strong winds. The Coast Guard was immediately suspicious because they knew that the wind had been mild that day. After the woman's body was found and the ship docked in Long Beach, the FBI arrested Scott and then held him without bail. The Bahamas had already issued an arrest warrant, and they were planning to charge Scott with murder on the high seas. There was actually a bit of debate going on over who would press the charges, the Bahamas or the United States. But how did they know Scott killed his wife? It was all thanks to the coroner's report. The coroner deduced that Karen had been choked violently and then thrown overboard before she died of drowning. It only made sense that her husband did the strangling. Then, in a very weird twist, after Scott was arrested, he told the police that it was Israeli secret agents who murdered his wife. And then they'd framed him because he wanted to expose crime committed by the Israeli government. He also claimed that these same Israeli agents tried to kidnap him. Nobody believed Scott, of course. He was a murderer. Scott was sentenced to life in prison in 1989, though he recently got out in 2017. Do you believe Scott's story? Let us know in the comments below. And if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 7. Alaskan plane crash. It's not every day that you get on a cruise ship and then die in a plane crash. Yet that's exactly what happened in 2021 after 6 people died during a sightseeing float plane excursion. The plane was carrying passengers from a cruise ship in southeast Alaska when it crashed at about 12 o'clock in the afternoon. The float plane was called the de Havilland Beaver, and it smashed into the Misty Fjords area of Alaska, according to the U.S. Coast Guard. The passengers on board the aircraft were all participating in a 7-day cruise that started in Seattle. They were taking a break from the cruise ship to go on the plane adventure, and nobody anticipated the aircraft would just fall out of the sky while returning them to the cruise ship. It's not exactly clear what happened. The region the plane was flying in is incredibly treacherous, filled with snowy mountains, peaks, and wild lakes. The plane activated its emergency beacon at 11:20 a.m. The wreckage was then spotted on a ridgeline at about 2 o'clock. The Coast Guard helicopter descended on the site, lowered down some rescuers, and found nothing but mangled corpses. Number 6. The COSTA Concordia disaster. The most infamous cruise ship disaster of all time happened on January 13th of 2012, when the Costa Concordia wrecked itself off the coast of a small Italian island. The disaster was entirely avoidable, and yet it happened anyway, killing 32 people and injuring dozens more. The Costa Concordia was a luxury cruise ship that sailed way too close to the shore, and the reason why is kinda shocking. After the disaster, there was a lengthy trial. Somebody needed to be blamed for all of those deaths. And during that trial, prosecutors claimed that the ship crashed because its captain sailed too close to the island to impress a young dancer from Moldova, with whom he was cheating on his wife. We still don't know if Captain Francesco Schettino was trying to impress his girlfriend. He claimed he sailed too close to the shore to salute the local mariners and give his passengers a better view of the island. Either way, though, the captain was found to be at fault. He was blamed for causing the disaster and for the lack of a safe evacuation. He was sentenced to 16 years in prison, with the court finding him guilty of manslaughter and causing a shipwreck. He was also charged with abandoning ship before his passengers and crew members could be evacuated, as he took off in a lifeboat while the ship was still sinking and then lied about it, telling authorities that he accidentally fell into a lifeboat because the ship was listing to one side. Number 5. The killer engineer. Julie Scully was 31 years old and unhappily married. While on a cruise, she met Petty Officer George Skiadopoulos, a Greek engineer. She met and fell madly in love with him while on that cruise with her husband. Shortly after, she even convinced her husband to go on another cruise just so she could continue her affair with that Greek engineer. Julie eventually confessed her infidelity, filed for divorce, abandoned her child, and moved to Greece to be with this young man. In December of 1998, Julie left New Jersey and fled to Greece, where she and George filed for a marriage license and planned to get married. At this time, George had actually quit his job on the cruise ship and was living with his parents. Julie brought with her a divorce settlement of $600,000 and promised to help George set up his very own taxi business. Turns out, though, George, not a very nice man. There were red flags right from the beginning that Julie ignored. One time, he threatened to strangle her mother while they were having an argument. He also had a history of violence, and he'd attacked his own family members. Oh yes, and he was diagnosed with schizophrenia. In January of 1999, Julie phoned her family and said she had made a terrible mistake. Before she could take a flight back home, though, she vanished. Julie was never seen alive again, but because she had moved to a foreign country, there wasn't really much anyone could do about it. There was nobody there to report her missing except for the husband who, as it turned out, had been the one to murder her. He was finally caught when he returned a rental car and the agents at the office detected a stinky odor from the car's trunk. In the trunk, they found blood. The police interrogated George, and 16 days after Julie vanished, he finally admitted to murdering his fiancée. Number 4. Cocaine Babes. In 2016, 2 women dubbed the Cocaine Babes were caught trafficking 207 pounds of pure cocaine on a Princess cruise ship. Just for reference, 207 pounds is about $21 million in cocaine. That's not a bad payday. But the payday would never come. Melina Robert and Isabelle Lagasse were busted and arrested by the Australian Border Force. They were actually identified as high-risk travelers by the authorities even before the cocaine was found. According to Fox News, one of the girls was a known escort and the other was an adult film star. Their journey on this cruise ship took them through several different South American countries, ending in Australia. Somewhere along the way, they picked up suitcases filled to the brim with the substance. But the Australian authorities were already onto them. When they finally docked at the Sydney Harbour, the stash was discovered and the pair were apprehended. Amazingly, Isabel was sentenced only 7 years in prison, while Melina was sentenced to 8 years. She cried in the courtroom and apologized for her actions, but the judge didn't really care. Number 3. Deadly boat crash. The Hungarian police were forced to arrest the captain of a luxury river cruise liner after the ship smashed into a boat filled with South Korean tourists, leaving 7 people dead and 21 people missing. The ship responsible for the accident was called the Viking Shigan, and it was sailing through the Danube River when it hit the vessel the Hoblyokny, causing it to sink in less than 7 seconds. The Hobbliokny was carrying 33 tourists from South Korea and 2 Hungarian crew members. But here's where things get absolutely nuts. Instead of stopping to assess the damage and see if the ship needed help, the cruise liner just kept on going. It literally rammed into the boat, watched it sink, and then kept on cruising down the river. Bye, Felicia. As you can imagine, the authorities take this kind of hit and run pretty seriously. The police arrested the Ukrainian captain of the boat, and he's expected to be charged with endangering water transport and causing a deadly mass accident. Some of the South Korean victims were found drowned over 7 miles downstream. Number 2, the bad magician. Something terrible has happened on a Disney cruise ship. A man named Andrew Pogson was arrested after being accused of assaulting a drunk woman who was passed out in her own hotel room. The woman claimed that when she woke up abruptly, Andrew was on top of her. He was immediately arrested and held on a $20,000 bail for sexual battery. What was this guy's job on the cruise ship? Well, he was the ship magician, a guy working under the name Freddy Fusion, in charge of entertaining children with magic. But as it turns out, the only magic Andrew could really do was magically turn himself into a dirtbag. Let's back it up a bit though. How did Andrew get into this woman's room in the first place? He had actually offered to take her on the Disney cruise vacation, using his prestige as the local magician. But she had already made it clear that she only wanted to be friends. Andrew said he was fine with that, but they were still going to have to share a hotel room. Andrew then proceeded to get her very drunk, to wait until she was asleep in their shared accommodation, and then he scrambled on top of her. When she woke up, she punched him 2 times in the face. No kidding. It's important to note at this point that Andrew has toured at least 40 countries as a magician, and even runs an outreach program for U.S. schools, and last we heard, the charges have actually been dropped, and Andrew is free and lurking out in the public. Number 1. Cruise ship serial killer. There's a fear that a cruise ship serial killer has been on the loose ever since the year 2000. Somebody who has made a career out of disappearing cruise ship passengers. According to official reports, at least 200 people have vanished without a trace on cruise ships since the year 2000. And the general consensus is that there could be a killer or killers purposely targeting the passengers. This theory was first made public by the family of Rebecca Coriam, who went missing while working as a nanny on a Disney cruise ship. She was only 24 years old when she vanished on March 24th of 2011. The official narrative was that Rebecca fell overboard during a violent storm. However, her family claims that the entertainment giant tried to cover up what actually happened, as they believe that she was murdered. She had over a year of experience working on the Disney cruise, and so it wasn't like she hadn't experienced a violent storm before. Apparently, no evidence points to her falling off the boat, yet the police ended the investigation almost as soon as it began. But if Rebecca didn't fall off the boat, it means she was murdered, and someone tossed her overboard to get rid of the evidence. To this day, her body has never been found. So would you dare get on a cruise ship after this video? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button and come back again soon for another fantastic video.